And welcome to the first ever Rhode Island Main Street Together Conference. My name is Lily. I'm the Deputy Director of Rosemont, Rhode Island, and the Director of Main Street, Rhode Island, which is an emerging new coordinating program aligned with Main Street America. So thank you all for being here today. After we picked this date, we realized that this is actually the Saturday before Halloween, and that Main Street districts around the state are all doing their Halloween festivities today. So I recognize that you all are missing those to be here with us today, so I thank you and promise you that it should be worthwhile, and that we won't make that mistake again. But I do want to let you know that we have at least 20 of our 39 municipalities registered to be with us at So I'm especially excited to welcome you to my hometown here in Cranston, to Cranston High School East, which is currently celebrating its 100th birthday. So I really think it's a perfect venue for today's event because we're really right in the center of what I think is generally considered Cranston's downtown, which is Rudolph Square. And thank you so much to the City of Cranston for co-hosting this event with us. It's actually my pleasure. It's my pleasure to invite Planning Director for the City of Cranston, Beth Ashman, up to give you some more.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Good morning, Rhode Island.
Good morning.
I'm here to welcome you on behalf of Mayor Ken Hopkins to the City of Cranston. He was dragged away by some familial commitments, but he wants me to tell you how proud he is of to host all of you in the city and how important Main Street development is to his heart. So he sends his best regards for a productive and inspiring conference. I just wanted to give you a few highlights about the work the City of Cranston has done to help move its Main Street forward, because we're a city, without really a downtown, but a city of main streets, a city of many neighborhood main streets. And I want to highlight two areas where the city's invested in recent years. In Ralph Square, this is a city-led initiative which began in 2021 aimed at transforming the area into a premier dining, shopping, and social destination by addressing infrastructure issues such as sidewalks and enhancing aesthetics with new street lighting, plants, and fresh signage. We're creating a more inviting and lively space for everyone to enjoy. And also in Knightsville. Similarly, our multi-phase Knightsville project is transforming the neighborhood into a walkable, community-centered area that supports local businesses. With the development of Beechtree Park and the streetscape improvements, including new ADA-compliant sidewalks and outdoor dining spaces, we're fostering an environment that is both welcoming and economically robust. As we gather here today, I encourage you to take inspiration from these projects and consider how similar initiatives can be adapted and implemented in your communities. Our success is a testament to collaboration. And thank you for being here and enjoy the conference.
Thank you so much, Beth. And thank you to the Cranston Planning Department staff also for being here today to help out. You should all know that this team works so hard, and as a colleague and a resident, I so appreciate all that you all do. I also want to give a special personal thank you to the board and staff of Rosemont, Rhode Island, to our Executive Director, Scott, and especially a special shout out to Caroline and Evelyn and Toby. We're being recorded, so it's on the record to know how very much I appreciate from the bottom of my heart all of your dedication to Main Street. So if anyone didn't pick up any of your conference materials, including your map if you need it, they're going to be available in the hallway. I want to make sure you know the restrooms are down the hall on the right-hand side. And also the cafeteria, which is a breakout session also for lunch. You go outside and in the next door, closer to the street, and it's right there on the right-hand side. So everyone knows where you're going. And Also the library, if you walk down the street, across the street, it's really only about 2 blocks. It's very, very close down that street. All right, now to the reasons why we're here today. So how many of you would say that you feel love for your city or your town or your community here in Rhode Island?
Go! Yay!
How many of you feel love for a specific Main Street or commercial district?
Yay!
Now, how many of you have seen something happening in another place and you thought, wow, that's really helpful, or that really makes a lot of sense, and you wondered to yourself, why don't we have that thing in Rhode Island?
Yay!
Well, I'm definitely one of those people. I absolutely love my community and I love living in Rhode Island. It's my chosen home now for almost 14 years. And when I learned about Main Street America and I realized that other states, 41 other states had it, and some of them have had it since the early 1980s, and I thought, wow, I think that could really help us here in Rhode Island. So now that we're really starting to have the program emerge here officially, it's a dream come true. As many of you know, we started offering our monthly virtual roundtable sessions starting in June of 2023. Last November, we kicked off our network of interested participants and started offering networking events. We now offer a monthly newsletter specific to Main Street, which is separate from the Grossmark Rhode Island newsletter, so if you're not signed up for both and you want to be, make sure you do that to the website. My colleague Evelyn has launched a Main Street podcast, which is really great. In fact, I hope you will check out episode 6, which features Durfee Hardware, which is right here in Wall Square in 1930. So one to definitely check out. And with today's event, we're really, we're taking that next step. We begin our first year as an official emerging coordinating program. So I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our program's founding sponsor and the title sponsor of today's event, Rhode Island Energy. So, a special shout out to Andrea Mosher and Brian Schuster, who couldn't be with us today, but who saw the value in Main Street from the very beginning, and without whom I would not be standing here today. So it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Rhode Island Energy's Community Engagement Coordinator, Kate Felder, to say a few words on behalf of our conference title sponsors.
Hey, thank y'all so much. It's such a great turnout. This is really great. I work at Rhode Island Energy, advocate shop in the whole wide world. I get to do cool stuff like this all the time. While I have your attention, I also get to coordinate all the volunteers. So I know a lot of times you're like, we have a fleet, we're trading plants and trees, and we're doing cleanups. Call your kid, I can help you with the volunteers.
Not that phrase, call your king.
So thank y'all so much for being here. We're really, really proud to be the title sponsor for this program. It's so important. And as someone who's lived in Cranston, I'm really, really happy this is happening in our neighborhood. If I can just tell you, if you don't live in this neighborhood, a cool tip. If you wanted to have a really cool Saturday night, get yourself a pizza from Bedla. Go over to the Auburn Branch Library. Y'all go in there and get some DVDs. They have excellent film noir. And have a great time. And thank you for coming. And this is so cool. Okay.
Thank you, Kate. We're so grateful for your support. I'd also like to recognize our other generous sponsors of today's event. First, thank you to our major sponsor, Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Rhode Island, and then to our program sponsors, AARP of Rhode Island, we've got Fussin O'Neill, GZA, List, Rhode Island, and Bank Newport. And then also to our friend level sponsors, the Rhode Island Association of Realtors, Darrell Everett, and Nicholas Brown. So we thank all of you for making here. So now I have another question. How many of you were interested in coming today because you want to support small businesses and grow the local economy?
Yeah!
Well, how many of you came because you want to build community connection and civic pride?
Yeah!
How many of you want to vote?
Yeah!
Well, that's good news because Main Street accomplishes both of these goals, and today we will be learning about tools to support our districts to accomplish both of these things. Now, personally, I feel that both local economic development as well as knitting our communities back together through social connection are both extremely important right now in the world. And I would like to now give the floor to someone whom I know agrees with me, who's a champion of small businesses and community building, and another champion of Main Street from the very beginning, and that is Lieutenant Governor Sabina Batker.
Okay. Citizen.
Good morning. It's so good to be here with all of you. It's truly a pleasure for me to be here to be able to tell you about my own experience with Main Street and why I support this program so much. First, I want to thank the sponsors for making this possible. It's so important to get your support in order for us to bring this type of conference to our community, and it wouldn't happen without you. So thank you. Thank you, Scott, and the GrowSmart team for everything that you have been doing to make sure that we have this program. We have been talking about Main Street for a while, right? And it's finally happening, and we have to thank Jillian also for her leadership, making sure that this continues to happen. So, all of you are taking this Saturday to be here to talk about Main Street. And our Main Street, because you know that it's the beating heart of our community, the center through which our daily lives flows. I can tell you from my own experience in Olneyville, when I was in the Providence City Council, I concentrated a lot in bringing resources to that area, the Main Street, because there were many businesses closed down, and many empty buildings at that time. I want to make sure that we brought new life and new energy into those buildings. One of the things that we're going to be talking about in this conference today is something that I've been working a lot with lately, and it's that community wealth building and the local economy. There is something that I want you to keep in mind as you're thinking today and talking about how to bring lives back to our Main Street community. I have been trying to get access to fresh food to communities, especially those that have been designated food deserts, like Woonsocket. And to my surprise, working with local entrepreneurs, many of them immigrants that just want to invest in this community, right? We find out that many of the buildings that you normally see shut down, and you're wondering, what's going on? How come nothing goes in there? So I had these investors that wanted to open a supermarket in Woonsocket. And what we learned is that most of the buildings that they could use to go and open a supermarket had a restricted covenant on it. Because either there used to be a big supermarket in that space, and when they sold the property with a restricted covenant for 30 years, saying that another grocery store could not go in that space. And this is legal, believe it or not. So that was the challenge one of the challenges that we found, trying to bring life back into communities. And I worked with the General Assembly last year. I introduced a legislation. They introduced a legislation on my behalf, looking to stop that practice of not allowing any more buildings to be at a restricted covenant, specific to grocery store, to make sure that our communities always have access to fresh food. The legislation passed in the Senate, but not in the House. So I'm using this captive audience here to let you know that I'm going to need your advocacy next year. We're going to introduce that legislation to make sure that our communities don't become zombies, right? With empty spaces that there's nothing going on in there. And this could happen anywhere. Happen in Woonsocket. There's a space right now in East Providence that's having that same challenge. One in Providence, also in Warwick, as you know. And I'm going to just mention one grocery store in specific. Just the Stop and Shop announced that they're going to be closing down some stores. If they close down those stores in your community, and then they put a restricted covenant that another grocery do not go there, that's just going to bring your community down. So I want to ask you to please, let's work on this, because what is happening is, in front of our eyes, we have seen that monopoly has been created, and we're not even noticing. So I know you have a lot of things in your plate, a lot of things that you're going to be working on, but I want to ask you to please join me in this fight. The legislation is not going, even though we checked with the AG and they would be willing to fight and defend the law if it was retroactive. It's not retroactive. Right now, we just want to stop the practice for now, and this is going to make a huge difference moving forward. But again, thank you so much for this opportunity to be here and to welcome you.
Thank you so much, Lieutenant Governor, for your strong and consistent support. So as many of you know, also speaking of the General Assembly, they passed legislation in June establishing Main Street, Rhode Island, and even allocating a little bit of funding for us to take this program a step forward. That effort was led by Senator Lori Urso, District 8 in Pawtucket. And on the House side, the legislation was introduced by Representative Art Handy, who I think should be with us a little bit later, as he represents District 18 here in Cranston, where we are sitting right now. So this action by the General Assembly is what has allowed us to bring Main Street America here today and throughout the next year. Hopefully into the future, we will also need your help with advocacy come next year. Later today, we'll be announcing the Main Street Learning Cohort. And if you won't be staying until the end of the day, please check our website on Monday for all of the information about it, because this is going to represent the first time in over 25 years that Rhode Island communities are going to have an opportunity to work in a sustained way with Main Street America.
Yeah!
So to start us off on this Main Street journey together, I'm now pleased to introduce Miriam Parson, who's the Director of Capacity Building Launch for Main Street America. She's going to give us our first keynote for the day. Miriam has 15 years of experience leading nonprofit programs that implement asset-based community development. Her role at Main Street America, which is relatively new, is dedicated to collaborating with burgeoning coordinating programs to help launch and support the implementation of the Main Street approach in new regions. So perfect for us. She actually talked about Rhode Island in her interview for this position. So thank you so much for being with us today, Miriam, and take it away.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You see me about those two streets, so I can face you while I look at my slide. Thank you. Wonderful. So I'm Miriam Parson. I'm the Director of Launch with Main Street America. It's a new role where we're investing extra time and early time to launch new coordinating programs. And coordinating programs like Rhode Island will be teachers. So we train the trainers, coordinating programs train local programs. And that's what we're here to talk about today. How does some work moving forward? I would just a lot correct. Or just unspace. So this is our team from, so sorry, I'm balancing two screens here. Just my brain just figure that out. Yeah. This is our team that works nationwide to train the trainers and to train community members directly. So while I'm here today, we have a nationwide team that flies around everywhere and specifically focuses in areas of expertise like historic preservation or local economies supported by local residents who are the core customers. We're not dependent on settlers. We are enough ourselves to give a thriving local economy. So we believe that all people in all places deserve thriving main streets and that we can build it ourselves. We have the skills, capability, it's just a matter of learning tactics. So we share tactics that have worked for about 50 years of Main Street America existing, but have worked throughout human history to create thriving local communities. This is a snapshot of just 1 year of outcomes from 46 coordinating programs across the country. It's 41 states and some cities, and we're growing in metro regions across the nation. What I always like to share is that for every $1 invested in a Main Street program, a local community, there's a $27 return for local businesses in their local profit. And so what we say is that it's one of the most effective economic development programs in the country for relatively low cost. That's why we're here as a nonprofit. We got started about 50 years ago, and I think we have a gentleman in the room who helped start Main Street America. Is that right? Not yet, maybe later. Thank you. Clark. Okay, lovely. Kathy LaPlante was telling me how wonderful he is, and I'm supposed to say hi to her. Perfect.
He's held Walmart.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. So the Main Street America program got started on a trajectory where we had density in all places, whether rural or urban or ex-urban. We had dense hubs of economic activity that changed, for better and for worse, changed with the highways bill, where Americans could travel and see new places, become customers in new places, but also bypass many places because highways, like in the center picture there, highways were served by malls that faced away from community, away from Main Street, and we saw decades of disinvestment in our main streets. So in the 70s, there was a pilot program with Miriam and these three gentlemen to experiment with how do we reinvest in main streets, learning from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which we often just call the Trust for shorthand. So the Trust had proven that restoring historic buildings as local assets for the heritage and culture, the center points of a community, drives economic investment further. It's not just that one building, it's the reverberating circles of investment that come after that one building. So then the Main Street movement said, well, the greenest building, the best construction is the existing building. So I come from a sustainable development background in my previous career in education, so I'm really happy that Main Street recognizes that the Main Street movement is also a sustainable development strategy. And so we talk a lot about historic preservation of our buildings, but it's also to drive new development to fit local accents, culture, heritage, so that your spaces look like your people and what you love about your place. And so this is an example where new construction was driven by the Main Street community, the Main Street organization, to reflect the local building facades, the local building standards. The Main Street movement is also, of course, about people. We start with organizing people before we ever start talking about buildings and assets and economic revitalization. We talk about how do we gather in our places to be customers to our own small businesses because they are our neighbors, and to celebrate our history, whatever that might be in your heritage in your place. And so sometimes that's events. Many times it's very diverse, wonderful small businesses that host a promotion event and bring people in specifically, and then you can create a trail and help them. But what I really want to drive home today is that this is a very cost-effective economic development strategy that's really about the intergenerational organizing so that people can flow in and out over time in a strategy that's proven to work not only for investment in small businesses and the physical space for downtown, but investment in people to organize and say, this is who we are, this is how we want to gather, this is how we want to be together for a thriving community as well as a thriving economy. So we're going to get into how this works. First, we organize the local stakeholders. So many times we expect an economic development program to happen from local government down. Main Streets happens from community members, chambers, volunteer groups, the Elks and the PTOs, the community groups that plant trees, all the way up to the corporations that are in the region that could be sponsors. Organizing all the stakeholders into a common vision and strategizing based on data what can be the economic revitalization strategy using the Main Street's 4 points, which we'll get into. We start with organizing. Then we're supported by a coordinating program. So in this case, it's Main Street Rhode Island, who's taught by Main Street America how to implement the strategies that work, but you choose the tactics. You know, here's an umbrella. You choose what works for you in your place based on your culture and your heritage. Nationally, we have 2 levels of Main Street certification, essentially. One is called being a designated Main Street. You have the highest scores when we visit you and talk through all of the tactics, how you're accomplishing them, and to the degree that you've made progress. The next one down is called affiliated. And affiliate communities are doing their best, but maybe they haven't scored high enough yet in certain areas, or they're not yet financially able to support a full-time executive director, but they're doing the work as much as possible as a volunteer board. And so that's where we're starting in Rhode Island, is how can volunteers work in their community, organize stakeholders, and get going with this learning cohort to begin on the trajectory toward becoming a designated Main Street, because that's who developers speak to, that's who local government can coordinate with when new projects come into town. So I want to talk about what is this strategy, what are some of the tactics, how does it look to organize around the Main Street approach. So we work through 4 pillars: economic vitality, design, promotion, organization. But we start with organization. I'll talk about that. It's really though about, we were talking last night, it's the vibe of the place. It's how you feel at home. It's how you know it's your people, my heritage, our future for future generations, our intergenerational work right now. There's a philosophy that we touch 5 generations in our lifetime. And so how can we bring that together in a strategic, sustainable way and protect our places from external shocks, as we know, from climate change, economic shocks, etc. This is a sustainable way to not just recover, but thrive through shocks. So we talk about the Main Street approach being about this sense of vitality, place, ownership, community. We start with organization, as you've heard me say many times. It's about organizing people. The tactics will come over time with teams doing projects, getting feedback, refreshing data so that the tactics adjust over time to the current scenario. But organizing people is about creating a vision that we believe in, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And for 50 years, it's in 5 years, we believe that our place can look like this, which is an improved vitality. It's a sense of we're on the path to what we see in long-term revitalization. By saying XYZ is what we believe in for our future, we can start to curate which tactics get towards that, the whole menu of Main Street approach tactics. Then we move to design, our physical places. Again, the trust verified for decades before Main Street America launched their work. The trust verified that historic preservation is an economic driver because it holds the unique character and the unique assets of a place so that people want to visit and experience that, but also so that our circle of neighbors feel at home, feel that sense of place, community, ownership. And so we start with, I know you're familiar with these, with facade programs or clean and green programs. This gives a sense of place in the physical aspects that we're organizing in a way that shows results in the short term while we're working on some of the long-term tactics. Economic vitality focuses on small business support. 98% of businesses in the country employ 20 people or less. This is our economies, our small businesses and our main streets. And so economic vitality talks about how do we recruit new businesses, how do we make spaces appropriate for current business demand, and these are our neighbors. Yes, they're business owners, but they're also residents who are volunteering, involved in local government. They're our neighbors too. And so it's organizing around a Main Street economy, but also organizing around our own people and our own place for long-term economics. And so the promotion piece here is very much about promoting our small businesses to bring in new foot traffic from concentric circles wider and wider and wider, and that's part of the strategy that we teach. But it's also about promoting to the local neighbors so there's consistent increasing baseline activity in our Main Street, and that's largely where that $27 return for every $1 invested in Main Street comes from. It's local people in our place being served by a strong, diverse business base, so you don't have to go elsewhere for what you need. I always talk about organizing the people first around that vision because understanding where we want to go helps us interpret what our market data shows us is possible first towards that vision. If we start with data for our market, we might say, well, there's demand for, I don't know, an axe growing place because it's popular elsewhere. But is that actually part of the vision in your historic spaces and in your downtown or the people who live there? And so we start with the vision first by organizing people, and that's what the cohort will do, is progress us towards a committee of 3 to 5, maybe more, who would attend 6 workshops. It's a pretty long-time investment for a lot of learning to move towards how do we interpret our market data towards where we want to be in 5 and 10 and generational years, so that we can develop a transformation strategy. This is one of our most demanded services from our nonprofit work, is to come in and work with you on building a transformation strategy that integrates all 4 points of the Main Street approach towards your vision based on local market data, so that you have a work plan to implement. And so this cohort that we're launching is not only teaching a full day workshop for each of these 4 strategy points, so that you're deeply understanding the national strategy that works, but also getting to how will you develop your own transformation strategy. That's the last 2 workshops after the 4 points. This is often what a Main Street organization looks like. Just to preview how large, it's not a board of 5 people, even though we'll start with that for the learning cohort. It's a large organization, so you can take your existing chamber, your existing CDC or community volunteer group. You can take your downtown association and mold it into the 4 teams for the 4 points of the Main Street approach. There's always an executive director that's hired to become a designated Main Street, where you're nationally recognized. There's some power behind that for fundraising and for negotiating with developers that want to come into your town. But before you hire, you're still organizing a volunteer board and volunteer teams and using our teachings through your coordinating program to implement the Main Street approach tactics. And so I just want to share here how wide the group can be, even if right now you're starting with volunteers. The accreditation means how do you become a certified Main Street. You've been doing the work for 5 years, you've implemented a transformation strategy, and you're working on your next one based on fresh data because your Main Street has changed, it's evolved, you've had your successes. This is how we measure, pardon me, there it goes. This is how we measure, but it's also how we teach. How do we lay out the tactics in a way where you can choose from the menu what works for you, your people, in your place, based on your assets. So I want to share an example here. So planning guided by inclusive and market-informed inputs. We talked a little bit about starting vision with your organized team, moving into data to plan a transformation strategy using the 4-pillar approach. I'm just going to read because I know it's a little bit small here. For example, market research and analysis has been conducted for the district's trade area within an appropriate time interval, so last 10 years, depending on the local economy. So some economies may want a longer timeline. This is recommended at least every 3 to 5 years. So did you do this? Was scoring 1, 2, 3 on how well you're accomplishing this tactic. And we moved down those. And so the accreditation to become an official national Main Street is essentially teaching tactics and us in conversation with you about how you're moving towards accomplishing them. And it's a score of 1, 2, 3 based on progress. So the timer approach is, are you walking forward with your people in your place, using tactics that are proven for about 50 years to result in economic vitality, but also community vitality. And so we start with assets. And I want to plug here that while the learning cohort only has room for 10 communities to walk 3 to 5 people, more are completely welcome, that's the number we're starting with, to have consistent attendance from a team through 6 workshops that are each a full day. While there's that heavier investment that we can put into those 10 applications that are accepted, we will also have a webinar series. And one of those webinars teaches how to do an asset mapping exercise so that you can bring that back if you're starting with a volunteer group, you're not quite ready to bring a team into the learning cohort. Maybe you'll apply next year to the cohort. And we start with assets because it's not just historic buildings, of course. It's natural assets, your rivers, your community gardens. It's the social assets. The clubs are planting the trees and saying, you know, we believe in leaving behind better than we found it for our children and grandchildren. When we integrate vision, data, transformation strategy, implementing a work plan across the 4 points of the Main Street approach, there are 2 ways that we approach these transformation strategies. One is consumer-based, where, for example, I've been working in San Antonio, Texas, and the cohort there, they have one business owner in that cohort who's adjacent to a military installation, but the rail lines separate her. And so she has great feedback when the ladies and gentlemen come over from the base and find culturally appropriate food at her restaurant. But it takes an inordinate amount of time for them to go around the rail system to get to her. And so she's talking with her Main Street group and her local government and the planning department, et cetera, to figure out how to create a better pedestrian crossing so that she's of service and they're supporting local businesses instead of ordering in from the mall. Then there's the product-based strategies. And you'll see this often where there's a for example, I was recently in a town in New England in New Hampshire, forgetting its name, where it was all ladies' boutiques. The entire Main Street was ladies' boutiques, and then on the back end was tea shops. But this is their tourist base, and so this is who they served, but also who they were. There's just the generational moment for this Main Street was business owners who were their own customers, and so that's the line that had developed on these 2 blocks. And so the data and the vision come together in strategies that build on existing assets, where you are unique in not only the heritage of the place, but the customer base and the business style. And while we build on easier tactics, so you get that speedy churn in change, it's visual, there's the year-over-year ROI on investing in your Main Street program, the harder tactics are also critical. We just are very clear that this will take a longer timeline. This is a 10-year strategy to start a new market because it's important for a diverse Main Street to serve all needs. So for example, you might outcompete the Walmart 3 miles down the highway by starting on a dry goods store, but it'll take a longer time to attract that type of business owner rather than building on existing clusters. So I want to return here to our sense of place. We talked a lot about dinner last night about how the specialness of a place doesn't happen by accident, and it doesn't stay special without ongoing, continuous work. And that's what the Main Street approach is. For 50 years, we've proven that this list of tactics and choosing what works for you across the 4 pillars and moving them consistently with that normal churn of people coming in and out of the Main Street teams to do projects that they care about, then they go back to their family, and then someone else comes into those teams for the next steps. That consistent cycle of transformation strategies creates the long-term vitality, sustainability, and the adaptability so that you're resilient over time. I want to close with just a few stories of a few more places. Now that we've talked strategy and tactics, the how, I want to get into a few stories of when we've seen this. So, of course, we're delighted to launch a coordinating program in Rhode Island, and I'm so delighted especially because we're shooting for 50, I'm just a numbers person, we're shooting for 50 coordinating programs by our 50th anniversary in 5 years, which is 4 years. And this is the 47th, so I'm really stoked that this is part of celebrating onward. Thank you. It's really not it's really appreciated at your local government. But we're moving towards a Train the Trainer program that's a 3-year process to train Jillian and her team to be expert trainers, so there's local, the investment that you're putting into this stays local, investing in Rhode Islanders to lead Rhode Island communities' futures, and we're here as teachers. So a similar example is in Boston. I shared that we have 41 states and then several cities, and we're growing this program in metro regions because it's a little different context sometimes. In Boston, this colorful map is all of their main streets. So it's not all of Boston's neighborhoods. These are their Main Street organizations that have the 4 teams working with volunteers, done a slate of projects, and a board guiding it and an executive director hired to steer it all and keep it on track. The Boston Main Street program, like Rhode Island is developing into, they provide the technical training. So this here is a little bit tiny, but the technical assistance where they visit small businesses and advise them on efficiencies, advise them on how to connect more with their landlord, because many times they're renters, of course, and so how can you collaborate with your landlord on the building to make sure it's improved and part of the Main Street District's strengths. And then also advising them on connecting to the ecosystem of entrepreneurial resources and funding stacks. And so the Boston Main Streets, like Rhode Island will be, provides that overall technical consulting, while the Main Street organizations and those volunteer boards are driving specific projects in your smaller places, in their neighborhoods. Yeah. I recently visited Meredith, New Hampshire with my Vice President, Kathy LaPlante, and I mentioned her because she's been with Main Streets for 40 years, and some folks know her. She's training me in this work and to work with folks like Rhode Island, where we're launching work programs across the country. In Meredith, New Hampshire, she worked with them to transform this 90s gas station. Like, this is what my childhood looked like. Cement, squares, no, you couldn't tell where you are by looking at this. Now, it reflects the neighborhood architecture. Their transformation strategy was based around being a quintessential New England town. They have water, they have mountains, they have a walking path with art, and the architecture is very colonial and very, how do you describe it? Like that sense of small and quaint that an outsider comes to visit as a tourist, but also, I grew up in rural Connecticut, just feels normal. Like, great, this isn't something strange that's part of my Main Street. It fits and is the normal part of the flow. And so this gas station is now not just a gas station, it's a sandwich shop, it's got fishing gear, it's more of a local dry goods store, general store for the neighborhood that can walk to this from other businesses. And one way they fund changes like this is a simple surcharge on tourists coming in and renting hotel rooms, so that when you visit, you're also funding the Main Street, which is making it special, and the reason that you're visiting. This is an old shoe factory that was abandoned for something like 20 or 30 years. At the time, it was in such poor condition that despite its square footage and its central location, it was only appraised at $50K. And then it was in a floodplain. So if it was not found, nothing was ever going to be able to be built there again. And so we worked with them to work with the county to prevent demolition and work with the Main Street organization that was already established, already working, worked with them to find a developer who came there because there's a Main Street, and so they know that transforming this building integrates into an economy where they'll have renters. And so they transformed it into apartments. And then because of that increased bus traffic, of course, the Main Street benefits where you're bringing in more neighbors as customers, not outsiders who ebb and flow. This is consistent customer base. And that developer knew they would be successful because the neighborhood's organized. They have an organization to work with long term. It's not just on a quick tax abatement and then you never hear again. One more example in Maine, they survived the economic shock of COVID by transforming their primary fundraiser that funds their Main Street organization. They transformed it into a grab-and-go bag for their craft beer festival. So instead of not being able to fundraise through a shock that no one, of course, foresaw or could control, which will happen more and more with climate change, etc., they transformed the strategy and did it safely. And so what we've seen is that Main Streets recovered something like 4 times faster than places without a Main Street organization after COVID, because they're organized and they have tactics to adjust to. Okay, this menu that is in our transformation strategy isn't appropriate this year. Let's pivot, because Main Street America provides a wide menu for you to choose what's best for you in your place with your people. And then I'll close here with Macon, Georgia, because they won the Great American Main Street Award. It's a national award that we give each year. And our president and CEO, Aaron Barnes, who's like a really, how to describe this, just an emotionally caring tone setter, where Main Streets are about the emotional connection we have to our place and our people, and feeling belonging. We were talking about tonight at dinner, both welcoming and belonging, where belonging is that deeper step. And so she spoke about Macon, about how From the generational wealth building programs to the pride of place initiatives, Newtown Make It, which is what they named their Main Street organization, offers an impressive model that centers the needs, desires, and dreams of locals. This is about local ownership, self-determination, and that very localized democracy where we decide our future, and there's systemic tactics to decide over and over again as people ebb and flow out of being a part of your Main Street organization. So just closing here with a quick, I'm forgetting our phrase. Anyway, just a quick rundown of what is on Main Street. It starts with organizing our people, of course, and just hear that over and over again. It's a methodology not only to revitalize businesses, but to revitalize our community working together and figuring out what works for us in our place based on our accents and heritage. It's a network. It's a brand. These are national standards where you can say to local government, listen, we're part of a national standard that works. That's why we're coming to you. We're not complaining. We want to work with you on this strategy that has shown to revitalize Main Streets all across the country. And of course it is advocacy. Jillian asked for your support to continue advocating for this method as a clear strategy to look to and see the future in 10 years, even though we're starting in year one with learning and organizing in the cohort. We offer very low cost nonprofit memberships. We're a nonprofit, and so the membership for an individual is $95. For an organization, it's $300. But we're going to be offering, or not an organization, a community group, like if you represent your neighborhood. But we have a secret startup membership that I'm going to send around to people. So don't sign up on the website. Let me cut the cost in half for you. But what I want to plug is that we just launched the Main Street Academy, which is an online classroom with both live and recorded trainings, so that you can get started. So I mentioned earlier, we'll have a webinar series for those who are not ready to join the cohort, or the cohort has space for 10 communities. So, if there's someone we have to say, listen, come back next year. Join our webinar series, because the homework after each webinar is on the Academy. And so while you have our gathering, and in the cohort too, you'll have our day-long in-person trainings, the homework is on our Academy, and that's a very low-cost membership. Thank you. I so appreciate this time to meet you all. I'll see you soon.
Okay, we have a few minutes for questions for Miriam. And what we're going to ask is that you ask your question into the microphone at this podium. So if you do have questions, please come on up to the podium. Thanks, Ricky. I just got to run off. No.
So no, I'm going to go to the rest.
You know what? I can.
I have a booming voice. Okay, so that town in New Hampshire, I think it was, yes, where the gas station was transformed, it looked like it was still a gas station
Yes,
as
sir.
well.
Mhm.
Okay, so they just expanded the use. Offers.
Yes, it's more like a general store now, like when I grew up in rural Connecticut, where we had everything, VHS tapes, everything you can think of in one place.
What's VHS?
Thank you very much. For those people who know me in the audience, this won't be a surprising question. Some of our most vital main streets here are in villages that cross municipal boundaries. Are there examples of main streets that actually involve more than one governmental jurisdiction? Thank you.
Absolutely. So I won't give you all the caveat. I've been on staff 7 months, so I don't have a vast library. But Kathy LaPlante has been on staff 20 plus years, and so I just asked her for her library. She told me an example about, it's a place in the Midwest, I'm sorry I can't remember the name, but they face this and across state lines, not municipal lines. And so they just literally had 2 Main Street organizations who feed into each other so that the local neighbors who know each other
they're working together in a unified way. But separately, their local governments are responsive because the constituencies are speaking to their representatives. So the easiest answer is more organizing, right? You're gonna have more Main Street teams working across the two boundaries.
Is that up your picture, Amanda? Okay. Any other question? For Miriam? If not, all right, we actually, wait, we do? Oh, oh yeah, that was practicing this one. Yeah, over. Okay.
Okay, I have two questions.
Great.
The first one is, so I live in Newport, Rhode Island. We actually have a pretty awesome downtown corridor. But I'm wondering.
That's an understatement.
You really
I'm vacationing there soon, I'm very excited.
Oh, wonderful. But I'm wondering, how does the Main Street initiative address the issue of houselessness? Because that's something that happens, and rather than say doing a sweep or something terrible like that, really inhumane, I'm wondering what that looks like. And then the second question I have is just for folks that do experience a lot of marginalization, whether that's BIPOC folks, queer and trans people, how does the Main Streets Initiative take that into account of just the ability to exist on the street in public?
Yeah, absolutely. So housing is a question we get a lot because it's just a core human, I don't need to explain this to this room, right? And so there are two ways we address this. One, we have a toolkit specifically about how your Main Street organization can work on increasing housing, but in that spectrum of easy to hard, remember the slide with green to red? It is on the long-term side. This is not something that's solvable overnight. I know this room knows this. And so you think about how can our building assets that we have some influence over, even if we don't want them to control them, how can the Main Street organization organize housing projects as a priority when local government, developers, and Main Streets are talking with each other? So there's that toolkit that I can share afterwards. The second piece there is that the transformation strategy may simply be a housing strategy rather than a specific product strategy. And so then you organize the 4 pillars, or the 4 points around how do we increase the multi-tiered housing costs in our neighborhood. Regarding the equitable representation, one way we address that is to be very clear that a Main Street organization, by the time we're coming in to do a transformation strategy, already needs to be organized to represent all constituencies. And we have situations where we come in and see, your stats are saying this, but this is who we're seeing in the room. How are your Main Street teams, not just including, but involving in actionable ways all constituencies that you represent your full community? And so we might say, listen, you gotta go back to the drawing board just a little bit and do more recruitment, and we can help you with that, adjusting your messaging to speak to different priorities versus the core that is able, is privileged enough to show up to evenings, et cetera, et cetera. So short answers are yes, I can send some resources around our housing toolkit, but it might be an opportunity for Newport to organize their Main Street transformation strategies specifically around housing diversity and affordability. There's also a couple coalitions I've spoken to. So recently I spoke to someone in Maui, Hawaii, who we essentially recommended that they work more directly with their social services and their religious institutions. We basically said there's a different coalition need as opposed to these 4 points and their teams. And so we were advising them on how we've seen coalitions build external to the Main Street organization to address the immediacy of those experiencing homelessness.
No, but I love what you guys are doing. Thank you very much. One of our challenges in our community is we are a group of villages within the city of Warwick. And a lot of villages already have somewhat of a community organization at different levels of engagement.
Sure.
And from our time exploring across our city, a lot of the community organizations have similar challenges. Not necessarily getting people, but they're wasting resources doing the same thing over and over again. One of my visions would be to have an umbrella organization such as Real Smart that ties a lot of these resources together to get a better impact in the city. How can your organization help us?
Good news. That is exactly what our coordinating program is. So what we're doing is training a coordinating program to aggregate the resources not only from Main Street America, but from Rhode Island's ecosystem, so that you have a place to turn to and ask a question and say, you know, this may not be like the unhoused situation. This may not be something that our committees, our teams in the Main Street organization will solve, but we can help you connect and build coalition with others who can address wider issues. And so the simple answer is that while each of those villages should have their own local Main Street organization, and to me they sound perfect. They're slightly organized, or they're very organized. The whole spectrum starts at Main Street. They just adopt the 4 pillars and come to the learning opportunities. And so I'd love for all of them to apply the cohort, of course, and come to the webinars. But the aggregation in our system happens at the coordinating program so that we're implementing the Main Street approach, because doing the same thing over and over and it not moving the needle is why Main Street America got started with a diverse menu of tactics, a transformation strategy that's locally specific, but based on the vision that's driven by local leaders.
Yes, please. As far as like districts within one municipality, I've been thinking about this a lot actually, and hoping that if someone is willing to organize all of those people into a single team to come to the cohort, I think that would be a great first step. I've also thought about whether it would make sense to have like one Main Street program for the whole city that has like a person that manages like, depending on how big it is and how big it grows, but may start managing all of them and then may, as it grows, manage 1 or manage 2 or, whatever. So we're definitely thinking about that as this program grows, and if you're part of it, you can help us define what that's gonna look like.
See, that's why I was afraid to go to the mic, and then you suck someone in.
I got a very similar question in Atlanta. This is a common issue in Main Streets, and usually the answer is like all of the above. It's about organizing people to organize the tactics. I'll be here all day. I'm so delighted to see all of you. Thank you.
All right, everyone, it's now time for our second keynote of the morning. Yes, the gentleman. All right, I'm very excited to have this next speaker with us, all the way from Portland, Maine, Teresa Valliere. She is a licensed clinical social worker and addiction specialist and clinical supervisor with a bachelor and master in social work. Since 1997, she has worked with adults with mental illness and addiction in a variety of inpatient and outpatient settings. She also has training in many other aspects of mental health, from trauma treatment to chronic pain and stress reduction, anger management, spirituality, and many more. And outside of her day job, Teresa is also the president of Friends of Woodfords Corner, which is an affiliate program of Main Street, Maine, located in Portland, that began in 2015 and actually became an affiliate of it in 2019. So the stories of her neighborhood remind me so much of Rhode Island. I really wanted to bring her here so we could all learn from her about how her neighbors went from having no kind of organization at all to being where they are today in only 2 years. So thank you so much for being here. Maybe okay? You guys hear me? Yes. Okay, great. Would you first say hi, Teresa? Hi, Teresa. Thank you. Okay, I feel better. So here.
One, let me thank the sponsors. Thank you, Rhode Island. Actually, I've only been here once. My sister graduated from Brown 45 years ago. I went to graduation and then I left. So it's still here. So yeah, I mean, like they had a wonderful core and terrific team. You guys are welcoming, and it's just been lovely. I'll be back. So let me start about here. Like, I think the thing that really stands out to me is that to start a Main Street program, my talk is really about how you do this, but when you don't own commercial property, when you are not a business owner, you don't work for the city, you're not a city planner, right? You're not a representative, you don't have any of those backgrounds, but you basically just want to do this in your area. And nobody is asking you to do this, and this is how we started. Nobody is asking us to do this. We just decided that, I decided with some neighbors that we want you in a better hood. So let me tell you a little bit about Portland. Anybody been at Portland?
Yes.
Yes. We are a tourist place, man, right? We are the tourist place.
You're a human community.
We're a beautiful city. I love this city. And I picked this in 2002 to move to, just because I didn't come here on a job interview. Didn't want the job, but loved the city. And then moved here. So this is what it's like, just a little background so you understand it. It is a shape, you see the shape of the peninsula? I'm in the way of some people. But here, like the city has this beautiful cove in the center, and then it's just surrounded by water. It's just gorgeous. It's not very big. It's only about 68,000 people live there in the city proper, but the metropolitan area is about 500 suburbs, etc., small towns. And when I got here, go forward. There we go. That's the cool part. Please don't. The cool part is like so cool. And please go back and, as we say, in Portland, spend your money. We love that. So I don't live there. I live over there. So when I first saw the cool part, that's why I picked it. But then when I actually had to find a place to live, I could not afford the cool part.
Yeah.
And it also was a little too dense for what I wanted. I wanted a yard. Basically, I wanted a yard, and I wanted to be able to walk my dog. I wanted to be able to have a little garden. And I wanted off-street parking because I know I did shoveling in Maine. So I was like, okay, so I picked over here. And it was kind of charming when I first got there. There's a charming area. Like what I could do in that half-mile walking area of this area, this is about a 10-minute walk. So that circle in any direction from the heart of the intersection is a 10-minute walk. And there were like some historic buildings right in the corner. There was a really cool art store. I do a lot of art stuff, so I was like, oh yeah, the art store. There's a very cool diner, breakfast, yes, right? There was a coffee shop, well, Dunkin' Donuts, and there was, green spaces that I could walk to, so I could take my dog there. It's just this lovely, like, it seemed like this really cool place to land. And I got to live in an old Victorian house in a nice apartment. I was like, this works. This is gonna be great. And so I started to really enjoy it. There was a hardware store. I was like, cool hardware store. The basic things of pharmacy. So the things I really wanted. Yeah. And I didn't know much about the area until later, but I'm going to tell you a little history about it, just so that you kind of get the frame. It is an old intersection. This is off the peninsula. It is an old intersection. This city is 300-something years old, the city of Portland. But this was an intersection that actually wasn't part of the city. It was its own town for even 20-something years. But it was an intersection of lots of roads to get to the lumber places, to get to all different places across the state. And so that big intersection in the 1700s was called Woodfords Corner. There was a family named Woodfords, and they made fancy columns for your hair. And that was where they and their kids had all built houses. Then over the years, the trains come. Right, which makes sense, of course. The trains come in, then the trolley is also here, and so now it's a hub, and it's a great little hub. It becomes the town of Deering, and then once it's the town of Deering for a while, it's actually the town hall of Deering is the historic building right in the center. Then it got annexed by the city of Portland. They have not forgiven people. The high school is still fighting like seriously over this. So, but it got annexed because it was. You can see that, right? It's the densest area, the peninsula, Actually, also in the late 1800s, in 1865, there was actually a huge fire in the city of Portland that burned a third of the city, and a third of the citizens wanted to move off the peninsula because it was too dense. It was too dense and wooden, and they didn't want that again. And they started building out that one thoroughfare, which is Woodfords. I don't know if you guys can see this, but this main purple stretch, to get around the water, you had to be able to get that way, and then you could get to all the towns further out. So what happened is that people started moving out, the railroads were there, the trolleys there, and then they started building all these houses. These had been farms and some plantations. That's a weird noise. And what happened is they started building what they call streetcar suburbs. So this is the very late 1800s, early 1900s, and that's the kind of house I landed in, was one of the streetcar suburb houses. So, and again, we're out there, but I could walk that. I could walk downtown and crawl the full stop, which is, good enough as a new person to Portland. So, how far? How far is that? From Woodfords Corner, way up there, that circle down to downtown is a mile. 1 mile. And so, it's on a nice day, it's a gorgeous walk. So, however, you do not take Forest Avenue to walk. It's pretty hideous.
What's hideous about it?
It's a highway. Do you guys have some of those? Yeah, because life changed, right? Life changed, culture changed, and after the trolley times, the trolleys are gone, the trolleys are shutting down, people are buying cars. Forest Avenue became the automobile avenue of the state, right? Where they had one automobile showroom after another. So now they're taking out, there's no passenger rail anymore. It's just great. They're taking out, all the trolley lines are gone, and it's just automobiles, and the road gets wider and faster, and wider and faster, and everybody's emptying out. They're moving to the burbs, right? Because this is what happened in America. So there's still this hub, though, with these very old buildings right in the center, and the businesses are drying up. This is exactly what happened in all the little main streets, which is why historic preservation exists, the Main Street program. It's just sad. So by the time I get there, it looked really cool from when I first moved in. I have to say, it's there's the cool downtown, and then this cool old house, and then I just sort of with blinders on about the rest of what was right next door. Because, I was a renter, I had a good paying job, I could travel and have fun, and I could do what I wanted. So I didn't really notice my neighborhood. So this was it. And you can see it's actually 2 5-point intersections right next to each other. And it's the second busiest intersection in the state of Maine. And when I moved there in 2002, about 27,000 cars were trying to get through that intersection every day. And it was a crazy cluster of weird lane changes and everything else. So even though people thought it had history, they literally paid somebody, the next one, they literally paid somebody for 27 years, a traffic cop to be in the center of that intersection. And it was a famous guy. When he retired, it was a big deal. They did not replace it. It's just a bunch of lights, but it's a lunch guard. And people hate it. Even though I lived not even a half block from there, I never went through that corner. I did not want to go through that corner in my car because it could take me literally, I worked 4 blocks away. And if I needed my car that day, it might take me 15 or 20 minutes to get 4 blocks through that intersection. It was such a hassle.
Faster to walk.
It would be faster to walk, except for I was scared to death to walk. Because the traffic behavior was so bad there. The traffic behavior was awful. People are so irritated, they're coming down the main stretch, they're trying to either get in and out of the city, and then people are not stopping. The crosswalks, we didn't have a good crosswalks situation at all, right? So you would run, you just run from one corner to the next. And, with my dog or icy or whatever, it's frightening. Nobody walked down there. Everybody said the same thing. It's just a crummy corner. So everybody avoided it. I literally lived 4 blocks from that beautiful cove, 4 blocks from my house. I would drive down there because I was afraid of crossing the exact street. 4th Avenue is a 6-lane road, parking on both sides, 4 fast-moving lanes of traffic with speeds that were too high. It was just too dangerous. So, Again, no, I went about my own business. I put my blinders on and just did what I needed to do, take care of my life. But then something happened, and about 12 years ago, the building I was living in, my friends needed to sell it. And I had been there already 10 years. My office was there. I was like loving it. I had a garden. My dog loved it. I was like, okay, uh-oh. I ended up buying this 3-unit that I was in. After I bought that, I thought, oh my God, I think I'm staying. That was like, I suppose I should not only invest in my own property, but also look around. I did not know my neighbors. I could travel, I got in my car, and I went to work, and then I came home, and I had a nice garden, or I went off to see my friends. I never sat on that front porch. There's a front porch, I just never occurred to me to sit on the front porch. I sit on the front porch now, I have 3 porches, and I have an open backyard in my neighbor's home. That changed drastically. But again, I was just sort of thinking as a renter prior to that. I mean, it wasn't my property. And I didn't know how much I was gonna love it. I mean, it was 10 years after I'd been there. I just had no idea how much I was gonna feel so at home in one. And so much love the community and the place. But then it was like the big place, and then it's the little place. My neighborhood, my property, my neighbors. How am I gonna figure that out? Well, so I went out and met some neighbors. Some of our neighbors started talking about things, which was good. 4 houses down, the house was a problem house. And this is where the we starts. It wasn't just about me anymore. It starts to switch to we. And the we is that there was a really bad house down the street. I live in a section of town, right, which is rural tracks. It really is. I'm on that side of the tracks. And my 3 houses down is a house that's not well cared for. And it was also a house that was causing an enormous amount of disturbance. And so I met my neighbor Jane. My neighbor Jane is a grandmother. Her kids also lived on our block. And she said, I am so mad about that house. And I'm like, yeah, we're all mad about it. We all complain about it. But, what are you going to do? So I walked down the street to go to a bakery like this, just to walk by that house. That's, because I didn't know what to do about it. There was drug dealing going on. There were fights. There was trash all over the place. It was just a very disorderly house. And what I would do is what all my neighbors do is we complain to each other. So there was the problem, and we all were feeling yeah, I complained. And then I went about my day. So Jane had enough. I really give credit to Jane, my neighbor. She got nana-mad, I call it nana-mad, because her grandchildren are trying to go up and down that block to get to the bakery at the bottom of the street, and they have to walk by that house. So nana-mad is powerful. I was pretty impressed. She went to the city. She was like, what are you guys going to do about it? She made little posters. She hung them up everywhere. And they had a city meeting at the local school. 45 of my neighbors showed up. I knew 2 of them. 45. And I was like, 1, embarrassed. I don't know my neighbors. 2, the city showed up. The prosecutor and our community liaison police officer. The police officer and the liaison, and the prosecutor explained to us they knew all about the problems in this building. What they didn't have is community support about notifying the city when stuff is happening. So they couldn't do much. And as I thought was a reasonable thing to say, in America, you do not park a police car outside a building and just stop. That is not okay. At least it used to not be okay. So, sorry. So they explained to us, they showed us over these 10 years that 45 people are all very angry about this. And they said, and this is the number of reports we had in the last 3 years, 3 reports. So the question became, how do we do this with the city? Because nobody wanted to call 911. A lot of times it wasn't 911 level, but also nobody knew, are the code enforcement, how does this even work? So they taught us. They taught us what to do on the block. We all kind of worked together, and over the next several months, this all got solved. That building got addressed, the particular people who were causing problems were addressed, that landlord who's not taking care of the property got dealt with. It's vastly improved. It's not perfect, but it's so much better. But then we have a list of 45 emails. And I'm like, well, that worked. What about this? Because I was so annoyed. Let's see. I was so annoyed this, because when you have a problem, right, you take a problem, you take irritated neighbors, right? And then you kind of get some information, right? And you find somebody with some power, you can make something happen. That's what we did. So then I was like, well, there's another problem that really irritates me, because I have to walk to the bakery every day. And this is what I see, because I have to walk over the railroad tracks. And I'm so sick of it. But again, I walk by that house, I walk by the railroad tracks like this, but I'm fuming by the time I get down to the bakery to get a cup of coffee. Like, okay, wait a minute. I got an email list of 45 people who are pissed. Excellent. But first I called the city prosecutor and the cop, the liaison that came and spoke at our thing. I said, how do you deal with this? This is the railroad. And then she said, we love that you guys care about this. This belongs to the railroad. It's a whole other layer of, organization and permissions. The city can't go on railroad property. Then I was like, well, somebody needs to pick that up. And they said, well, they won't. My friend works for the railroad. He's the detective on the railroad. Called him. So I did. I said, I will get people to pick this all up, and I will ask the city to pick it up on the street side. If we drag it to the street, they'll take it away. Can we go out there and drag it to the street? He said, I would be happy to do that. I am so sick of my job is looking at trash on the railroads. He said, I hate it. It's awful. You're the only organization that's ever asked to do this. I was like, I don't know if we're an organization. I'm an annoying neighbor. But we did, and I just put up little papers. I took that list, I sent an email, I put out little post-its around the neighborhood, stuck on the telephone poles, I said, please come help. 30 people showed up that day. With wheelbarrows, with trash bags. The city arranged to have the trucks that circle streets, and we cleaned up 5 blocks of nasty trash. And it was like, oh my God, it works. Oh my God, it really works, right? So here we go again, a new problem, invested neighbors, now we're invested. This is kind of cool. This is kind of cool. We do have some power, but we've got to be organized. The whole thing is about being organized and a little irritated. It helps. Use the force for good, right? So then we get to this point where I'm like, what's next? So I thought, throw a party, right? Because now, you work hard, then you need to have a little fun, right? Because if we just keep asking people to work and we don't have some fun, they're gonna fizzle out. They're gonna go away. So I said, I'm gonna go pop up in my backyard, send the same list of people, put up some signs. Many of those people came, some others that I didn't even know came. And I'm like, you guys, if we could do something about the corner, what would we do? What would you guys want to do? And they're like, yeah, this kind of sounds fun. A lot of fun, a lot of chit chat. Out of that, the idea said, well, let's have a community meeting because we're not the ones to decide. I said, okay, fine, let's do this. So I called there it is. I had already belonged to the Woodfords Club. If you don't know your organizations in your neighborhood, get to know them and join them if at all possible, even if they seem a little not quite you. I had already joined the Woodfords Club. It's 1 block away. It's been around for 100 years. I joined it because I do workshops as part of my work, and I needed a cheap and cool and local place to do my workshops. And they told me if I joined the club, I got a 25% discount on rates. I'm like, I'm in. So then I was like, hey, there's a meeting space. I just went over, called these guys, said, can we have a public meeting? We did. Another group, some of the same people, and some other people showed up, and we did a brainstorming session. I only wanted to know 3 things, right? What you like about the corner, what do you not like about the corner, right? What would you like to change? And what can you do to help? What can you do to help? And those 3 things that people brainstormed, they all chit-chatted with each other, we gave them cookies from the bakery, it was great. And then we came up with this sort of dream list, problem, and a problem list. Okay, great, we have both. And then it's like, now what? What do we do next? And the question I said to them then is what are we gonna call ourselves? There were lots of neighborhoods or neighborhood groups and neighborhoods around in the city. I couldn't figure out which neighborhood I lived in. Was there an association? There had been one, and it died 15 years ago. Nobody was doing anything. Neighborhood associations would rise to solve a particular problem and then often dissipated. And I was like, well, I don't want to dissipate. I don't want to just be problem. I want to be vision driven. And I want to focus on the commercial section. Because when it really comes down to it, I want to sell my car and be able to get all my needs met right before. I want to be able to age in place.
Are you there yet?
I'm close. Yeah, I'm very close, actually. I want to be able to walk down the street and get the vast majority of my needs met. right there in a walkable neighborhood. I had lived in a place like that once, a long time ago, and I knew that that's kind of what I wanted now. And yet, I didn't know how to do it or help it. I didn't, and the organizations, this sort of scatter of other people doing things, was hard to figure out, because everybody was sort of like, yeah, we do things for our neighborhood, even though it looks like it's part of Woodfords Corner. They're like, yeah, but that's the intersection. That's the intersection. That's the nasty traffic part. And I was like, well, who's going to pay attention to that at this point? So we came up with Friends of Woodfords Corner, because traditionally neighborhood groups have been called Friends of. It was like, good, vote, we're done, just move on. And it was great, it was very helpful. Now we sort of have an identity. So our first meeting of these people, we went back to my house. I'm like, who's willing to meet again and come up with some ideas and actually some action plans? 6 or 7 people came to my house a couple weeks later, and then we started poking around, like, what's already out there? And I'm not very good at tech, and I'm really bad at social media. I don't like it. But one of the people sitting there said, there's Girl Friends of Woodfords Corner on Facebook. I said, really? Who are those guys? And they're like, I don't know. So on Facebook, somebody showed me how. I sent a message to this guy, Eric, and said, hey, who are you guys? And what do you do? Eric writes back to me. He's my co-founder, officially, of this organization. But he writes back, he said, well, we write articles. We're land planners, and we wrote articles, and they were published in the newspaper 2 years ago. And I was like, cool, what else? We said, that's it. And I said, well, we pick up stuff. We clean the street. Can we work together? And he said, sure. So he and I had coffee. We sat down. I was like, Eric, he's a land use attorney and an urban planner. And I'm like, the guy's brilliant. I'm like, yeah, but who's picking up the trash? And he's like, well, I'm like, oh my God, Eric, too many up there. Like, can we do stuff on the ground? So he was willing to do this. We started figuring out, okay, now what's next? The whole history of FWC is not about knowing I was going to be a Main Street. We didn't know what a Main Street was. I didn't know what it was, never heard of it. Right? But it was just about neighbors irritated, then, and kind of enthused, and then kind of come up with tangible things to do. Tangible. Because without tangible, I knew I'm going to drop out of this. I come from the mental health world, where there's an awful lot of talk about happiness, but like how do you help it happen? There's a lot of big theory, but how do you help one person at a time, one family at a time, right? It comes down to action. So I thought, well, let's do this. So I thought, it's time to throw another party, but now what about another location? So I thought about this one. So this place is the Oddfellows building. It's right in the heart of the intersection. It's cool. I have walked by it for now, 12 years, and never really noticed it. I was like, what is that? The clock had not worked in 25 years, right? I've never seen anybody go in and out of there. There was a weird coin shop in the first floor, but nobody was going in and out. And the windows were packed with stuff. And I was like, what a weird thing. I'm like, well, if that looks like it's a big building, maybe that has something. I wrote to the International, or the Independent Order of Oddfellows National Headquarters in Washington, D.C. by email. And I said, who owns that building and how would I get in touch with them? And they CC'd an email back to me, said, Tiny, talk to that woman. I'm like, who's Tiny? Tiny says, come to supper on Monday night. I'm like, okay. So I went to supper on Monday night, and I met a bunch of the Oddfellows. They have this beautiful old building. They've had it for over 100 years. It was built in 1900. They are still an active lodge, like all lodges, like all these organizations. Their membership is about 20 people at this point. But they have this enormous, gorgeous property in the center. I was like, whoa, man, who are you guys? What do you do? Why are you a group, right? And like, can you show me this building? So I got a tour of the building. There is a 2-story ballroom on the 3rd and 4th floor that they use for their 15-member meeting on Monday nights. There's a 2nd floor banquet hall that they have supper before they go to their meeting. I was like, can I say that again?
With 20 people.
It was like, I just was like, whoa, what's going on here? But it was just like the Woodfords Club. It was the same thing, a tiny membership with an old historic building, trying to hold on, but they're like so, like I didn't know who they were. Nobody knew who they were. I was like, nobody knows who you guys are, right? And so they were like, well, there's that hippie woman. They were very nice to me. And I said, can we throw a party? Like, after I saw the banquet hall, I was like, can we throw a party here? And they were like, what kind of party? A history party. Can we do a thing about history? So I called Greater Portland Landmarks. Didn't know them either, but I said, do you have anything about the history of Woodfords Corner? They're like, we would be happy to do a show for you. I'm like, great. I just talked these guys into using their hall. Great. And then we hung up little pieces of paper around the neighborhood. We anticipated 50 people, 125 showed up. I was over numbers. I was like, okay, I think I kind of, overdid things like fire code. There was no fire thing. It was not technically a rentable space because it was not up to code. I didn't know any of that, so no, I didn't get in trouble, but they were highly enthused. When I explained that these are the Oddfellows to that group, everybody went, who's the Oddfellows? And then you guys. Then they gave a tour of the building, and people were like, whoa. I'm like, okay, we have tapped into something here. People like history. People are very curious about architecture, right? People want to talk to others, and many of the people who showed up with that were elders who grew up in the neighborhood, who then told stories about breaking into this building. It was fascinating. And I was like, well, now I know I got another banquet space, right? Another meeting space. I got people who are interested, and I got a longer list. We got a longer list, and we have a core group of people willing to kind of do things. So we started doing little things. They're little. I mean, we didn't know what else to do, but I knew from the back of this, if we don't get a bit organized in the back of the house, this is not going to hold. I don't want to just throw parties good. That's not what I'm trying to do. So what we did was, we decided we needed to get some kind of organization going. We decided we would become an official we already named ourselves. Then we decided we're going to do some things, but we're going to become a nonprofit, an official nonprofit. One, because we wanted some money to do things. For that party, I got all the local restaurants to donate free food. But I'm like, now we want cash. We need some cash to do things. So in order to do that, we need to be tax deductible. We have to be a 501c3. I didn't know how to do it. Call around with your friends. Somebody said, oh, I know how to do that. I'll do the application for you. We just got it done. It became a thing. Then we had to write our mission. And it's like, how do you do this? What is the language, right, that we want to use to describe it? What we wanted was a thriving, welcoming village hub.
A we.
A great big we, but local. All of us had the same complaint. Downtown got too cool.
You should have said.
Too cool, too expensive, hard to park. Everything is like more expensive, harder to get there, full of tourists. Everybody was like, I love my downtown, I'm proud to show it off, that peninsula. But I also I just want a walkable hub. I want a little grocery store, I want a little pharmacy, like the stuff where I can get life business done and I can kind of, say hi to some neighbors. We all agreed that's kind of what we wanted, but we knew we were going to have to help somehow do that. Help the hub, which means helping the businesses and the property owners as well as helping themselves, right? So it became a 501c3, and then we organized ourselves on back of the house. That one show? Yep, this one. So we wrote some bylaws. You got to do it. You got to do this stuff. Actually, look it up. You can do AI now, and you can get a really good set of bylaws. And make sure everybody signs off. You register with the state. You did that, right? We started doing more communications. Like, how are we going to communicate? We need to be really clear how we're going to communicate. There's front of the house communication, which is to the public. There's back of the house communication, which is amongst ourselves. And we had to decide how are we going to do that. Many of the local organizations that I could see trying to do their out to the public, trying to get people involved, had a kind of a negative tone. They could be kind of, it's like, this should change. And I was like, we can't do that. I don't want to be part of that. Complaining is not what I want to do. We'll complain in private to those that have power to make changes, and we'll work behind the scenes. But out front, we need to be cheerful because Woodfords Corner has a bad reputation. And we don't want to just become a screaming war, bad reputation place, right? So what we did is that we decided money, right, organization, communication. Then we had our we. Then you got to do homework. And I think the thing about homework is here, so much is going on. One of the things that was astounding to us is the number of beings and organizations and levels of government that were interested in our area. Not just our area, but our area as part of the area, right? So the comprehensive plan for the city of Portland I actually went to those things I don't normally do. I went to these things and I started going and listening. The comprehensive plan said, pay attention to your intersections, the nodes of your city. I was like, well, yeah, we're a node. So how are you going to, it says invest in that. I'm like, well, so I asked the city council, I was like, does that mean you're going to give us money? And they're like, oh, no, not money. I was like, well, what do you guys mean by that? Like, I see that you agree that these things should happen because this is the way cities always grew. They grew by these nodes, getting more and more dense and more vibrant. But then they hollowed out. And I was like, so yeah, so I guess we're gonna do it. But knowing what's the larger visions of the city, and also then all these different groups that are working on pieces of that vision. Like there's the Bicycle Coalition of Maine. It's all about safety, bikes, right? Fewer cars on the road, more bikes. That's a sliver of the population that's gonna be bikers. But to have safe bike places is great. It's great in a big picture. It's also great in our corner. You would never ride your bike through one such corner. You were a target, right? So, like, how do we weave in those kind of contacts and those kind of people into what we're trying to do? So we call somebody and we say, hey, we're trying to do these things. How can your group help us? This is how we just started getting people from Ricketts and the Landmarks, the Bicycle Coalition, the neighborhood associations. It's just people will call people like, hey, how can we do something together? Even if we just know what each other does. The biggest thing is just knowing what each other does. And that was a lot of homework. It's a lot of homework, but it's actually kind of fun. It's just go out and meet people. After that, we decided that we need to do some homework on theory. And I know for me, it's really great to hear all these different organizations are working on their things. Like, I believe in sustainability, and Portland Trails, and Bicycle Coalition, sustainability. I'm like, I sort of sign on to all those same things. Usually I just write a check, right, to support those organizations. But I'm like, what are you guys doing in my neighborhood? What are you doing in my neighborhood? Like, how can we do something here? How can we do something here together that helps? We are not alone. I started reading about what makes a great city. Some of the best books, if you can read them, if you can get through like Jane Jacobs, Great American, right?
Like the death of Great American.
It's a spectacular book. People are not going to read it with you. Trust me. They're not going to do it. But one of the chapters in the far back is
very poetic.
It's very poetic. But she was paying attention to human behavior on the street, not just planning human behavior on the street, which I come from the whole world. I pay attention to human behavior. So I was like, this makes sense to me. Walk your streets. Watch what people are doing. See where they're willing to sit. See where they cross the street and they don't cross the street, right? See where they get scared. See where people pushing a stroller go the other way. That's really important information. Which stores or entrances are welcoming, which are not. What happens in the evenings, what happens on the weekends. Start walking the streets. And then start reading about, what have other places done? Because we're not alone. Woodfords Corner is like every other historic district in the country. We got hollowed out. We don't like that. A lot of us are invested. Within that half-mile circle of that intersection, we're the size of some of the towns in Maine. We have just under 9,000 residents within that 10-minute walk of where my house is. 9,000 people. Many of them, it's about 38% renters, and the rest are homeowners, right? We have every kind of zone there is in the city, every kind of zoning, but I had to go and learn about zoning. And then we had an open course that we just offered at the Oddfellows about, did you understand zoning of your neighborhood? And maybe 15 people came, but they had a riot because we met each other, we learned about zoning. Why is this? Why can't we have this? What could we do in these places? So learning, some more learning, and then just be conscious that everybody has an opinion about an issue in their area. Everybody else has their opinion, and I've learned to say, wow, that's interesting, thank you so much. Right? Because bottom line, do they live there? Do they work there? Do they have investment properties there? Okay, great. That place got big plans. And I'm like, yeah, but I live there. So I want to funnel all this stuff down, and we'll pick and choose the things that tune them up in ways that will trip us as a group.
Done.
That we built was it became a 15-seated board. Really, mostly about 10 seats are filled. There's a rotation. we particularly recruited young people and renters into our board because the people who usually want to do this, right, are retired people. I was not retired, but I had that more time than others, right? Retired people with property usually show up in these groups. That is not our field area, right? And so that will skew things in certain ways. And we didn't want to be skewed. This is about the hub, not just about your residential property. So, a moment on language. There's a lot of technical terms. Everything I went to, everything that we all went to, and all the people we started bringing in, many of them homeowners and also experts to certain ends. So their language get very experty, right? And I was like, this seems a little hard. It's going to be hard to convince the renter that lives down the street from me to come and join in this board or in this group and volunteer with us if we're using all these technical, traffic patterns. So what we did is that with language, we started to pay attention to how can we have these conversations with people that we're not going to be technically jargony, because that's pretty off-putting. It's really off-putting. If we come in and start talking to, I may learn a lot of jargon, but it's my job to translate that into something that is more, not translate as if they couldn't understand it, as it isn't off-putting. Also, talking about things not as if we're coming in here to make a place. We're not making a place. The place has been here for 300 years. We don't make it. What we do is care for it. And we're caring for this place because it deserves care, because we all deserve care. And so starting to think about the way we explain what we're doing. So there it is again, not a great picture, but again, it's a busy hub. As you can see the wide roads, right? The wide roads, which are just a bummer. All right, so we chose at some point, now we become a nonprofit, we're doing some of these activities. I meet somebody who is a young man in the neighborhood, works for a neighborhood association, and we're just having coffee in my backyard. Somebody said I should talk to him because he used to run a main street in Massachusetts. He used to run Jamaica Plain. And I was like, what's a main street? I'd never heard of this. He comes to coffee, we're sitting and talking, and I'm like, wow, why did you leave then? If that was so cool and you lived down there and then you moved to Maine, he had his own reasons for coming up to Portland. And then I was like, well, what do you want to do now? He said, I want to open a coffee shop. I'm like, well, good, because we only have Dunkin' Donuts and we don't have a fancy coffee shop. Actually, I know the guys at the Oddfellow, because can I take you over there and meet them because one of their spots is open? And I was like, okay. So we walk over, turns out he opens a coffee shop and then is there for it's a very simple warm handoff, we call it in the mental health world. It's just a warm handoff, right? You don't know this one, and then I'm gonna walk you over and give you it, there. And I'm gonna pray that works because I want a really cool coffee shop. It did work, he was there for 3 years. Businesses, small businesses had started coming in. The peninsula is very expensive for housing and very expensive for commercial businesses. It has the property values are going crazy in the city, that people are moving off the peninsula in our direction, but they want to come some kind of commercial pay. So by now we've got local restaurant has moved into one of this big abandoned buildings, and it's become a really popular restaurant. We're starting to get these kind of folks, the visionaries, the business visionaries are starting to come our way. So we need a model to really be able to engage them. So what we did is looked at the Main Street model. In Maine, we already had a coordinating program. So that was very, very helpful. So Maine has, at this point, I think Maine has 14, I don't remember how many full communities, and it was something like that, 14 full communities. It also has 11 affiliates. We're an affiliate, but we're the only neighborhood in the state that is an affiliate. Everybody else is a municipality. They are small towns, right? So their town government is in on it. We're not. We're a municipality. We're a neighborhood. We're the only one. And it's a very different kind of animal than neighborhood-based Main Street within this organization, because we don't get any funding from the city. We get nothing. It's not that the city doesn't appreciate what we do. They're phenomenally helpful to us. But they have a lot of big problems to solve in the city that are more important than the amenities, what they would consider most the amenities of ours. And not that they ever say it that way, it's just a matter of when you stack it up against homelessness, climate change, water is rising down on the peninsula. These are bigger issues. But we decided we were going to stick with the Main Street model. We applied in 2018. We were accepted with filling it in 2019. We use a slightly different terminology, and it's mostly because it helps people understand. Community engagement is what we switch from emotion, right? Community engagement. And we try to do things like, it's design and care, nice, design and care. Your organization doesn't have to be pretty behind the scenes. This is kind of how we do this. And we didn't want to have a top-down, stay away from that height. We didn't want to have a top-down approach, like here we're a boss. There's nobody paid in our organization at this point. We're still all volunteers. But we wanted to start thinking about the model, using the model, and then having little teams that will come up in what they care about. So we had people that cared about green and clean and sustainable streets, right? So picking up the trash, helping the tree wells, helping with the little Trinity corn tree. Those guys care about that stuff. It was well, then you guys figure out what you would like to do, and we'll see what the organization you tried to make us do. We had people that cared about, as I said, bikes, crosswalks, the bikes, that's active transportation team. So those guys focus on that. We also did teams like the economic vitality stuff, like how do we engage businesses? We go out and talk to businesses, what we're doing, how can we do it, how can we help you get more customers, how can we promote you? So that's economic vitality. We have also the events team does for community engagement. So events does lots of little events and some very big ones. But that grows over time. That grows over many years. So, as I said, walk your streets often and then figure out how to do things. Those are the 3 books that I found really helpful. But Walkable, the one in the center on looking, is 11 walks with expert eyes, through expert eyes. And this woman walks her place, I think it's roughly, we read, I can't remember, it might be Brooklyn, somewhere in New York, but she stays in the same small block area with different experts. So we started with what expert's going to get to walk people around in our neighborhood? So some people would sign, and we say, hey, sign up, come on over and meet us and go for a walk for this. Getting people able to walk with different eyes, and somebody could talk about the trees in Woodfords Corner, or a different architecture in Woodfords Corner, or the different, I did one all about hill strips. You guys know what hill strips are? Hill strips are the esplanade between your sidewalk and the street. There's a little green space that's owned by your city. Those are called esplanades officially, but then we call them hill strips. So anyway, but one that's how can you make things grow? Time, yeah, thank you. So what we did is we did a bunch of these little things. We throw a lot of parties. We throw a lot of small events and a lot of parties. A couple of things I'd love to make sure you know. One, raise money, but don't get bogged down. Our budget for the first until 2021 was about $5,000 a year. Raised by just asking businesses. Right? At this point now, we have a lot more people that we can ask for money, and now we have a $50,000 budget, and we have a part-time staff member, half time. But do lots of visible, fun things, engage everybody, get students if you can. We're an extra university. We've had students the past 5 years, graduate students that do projects for us. That's a big help. Know your institutions, right? Work with your government. These guys love us because we work with them and we don't just complain. We actually quietly, persistently get to know them. Politely pressure your politicians.
Yes.
Politely. We don't do this publicly. We go and privately meet with them. We ask them to call me. We really do that. Community activities, like your website is really useful. Right? Pay attention, have a website, have a community calendar. Anybody can post to this. We do not charge for any of this. And then we push community activities to the community in a newsletter. Local businesses, many of these have all come in the last 10 years. Right? Pay attention to your history, share it, but also look forward and get fun. The thing that makes it neighborly is fun, and it feels fun and it feels local, it feels welcoming. You're not a spectator, you're not a tourist, but you feel like you're coming. So the opportunities to participate in doing this is really what helps people do that. Participate in little ways and bigger ways. So on that note, I'm going to let us wrap the meeting time. And thank you for letting me share. I wish that we could have you talk like for another hour, but we are going to keep on our schedule. It's 11 o'clock, and the next session starts at 11:15. So just a reminder, in here is going to be the local economy session, where the small business session will be down at the library. There's a walking tour that also leads from the library, and then over in the council chamber is our programs and events with the Downtown Missouri Collaborative. So if I can people that are helping with the sessions, if you can get a head start, run out to where you need to go, and then Teresa, I hope you'd be available to answer questions down here at the front, and she'll also be at lunch, so you can have her at lunch if you have questions for her. But a huge round of applause. Thank you so much, Teresa, for coming.
So, I do want to share a quick story about our next presenter. So, I became seriously interested in bringing Main Street America to Rhode Island in the very beginning of the year 2021. And it's right when a book came out, and that book was called Main Street's Comeback and How It Can Come Back Again. It was written by Miriam, a very well-known Main Street America board member and leader. And the whole movement, and that was what the book was about. So I'm reading the book, I'm reading about the project, how it was started by the National Trust for Historic Preservation in the late 70s, and how there were these other three people who were working with the author who went out to work in three, test case communities out in the Midwest, and so they were basically the three first Main Street managers ever. And one of those people was named Clark Schoettle. And I thought to myself, that can't possibly be the same Clark Schoettle from Rhode Island, who led the Providence Revolving Fund from 1983 to 2018 and grew it into a $12 million community development fund that continues to grow and evolve today, whose work changed the face of Providence, revitalizing its neighborhoods and downtowns, including the creation of the Down City Fund that invested over $16 million to help finance the redevelopment of 24 underutilized properties in downtown Providence. Could that person, who was one of the first three Main Street managers ever and one of the actual architects of the 4 Points approach, actually be living right here in Rhode Island? Well, it was, in fact, the very same Clark Schoettle, and I am so excited to have this true Main Street celebrity here with us today to tell us the story firsthand of how those now very famous and very proven effective 4 Points came to be. So thank you so much, Clark.
Thank you. Well, put that up. So it's amazing to be here today, and it's really exciting to see Main Street starting to take off in Rhode Island and seeing this conference. I'm going to share with you how Main Street came up with or Main Street America, I guess, came up with the effective 4-point approach, which is based on organization, promotion, design, and economic vitality. These 4 guiding principles or activities really have provided the framework for downtown revitalization in over probably 850 towns across the United States, probably more than that by this point. The 4-point approach really came about as a result of the original Main Street project. It didn't exist before the Main Street project was conceived and after probably about 2 or 3 years of it being in operation. The origin dates back to 1970s. And it's sort of interesting when you think back to the 1970s, and I was sort of thinking about it. It was before the World Wide Web existed, before people had iPhones and could carry around cameras in their pocket. And there was no Amazon Prime. And at the time that Main Street was conceived, inflation was about 14%. So we think inflation was bad 3 years ago. Can you imagine trying to buy a house when mortgages are 16% interest? It was a crazy time. And also a crazy time to think about revitalizing downtown. So how did we get there, and why did we get there? I think the origins date back to the first shopping mall, the first enclosed shopping mall, which was built in 1956 in Minnesota. And in the next 20 years, up to into the 70s, shopping malls had pretty much permeated large cities, being in all the suburban areas around large cities. And then by the 70s, they were starting to focus on smaller downtowns and smaller regional markets because they just needed to keep expanding. And so as they started going into the smaller markets, they were affecting what had been sort of the regional hub, which might have been a town of 25,000 people or up to 50,000 people, let's say. They were decimating these towns because they were locating at the interchange, the highway interchange, and the downtowns really were not capable of competing with a national developer and national retail franchises. So this was really impacting small towns, especially in the Midwest, where the parking malls were first born. In response, downtowns were trying to do everything that they could, mostly to try to emulate the physical appearances of the mall and the physical attributes of the mall, rather than the management structure of the mall, because they couldn't figure out how to do that. So they were tearing down buildings to create parking lots, acres of parking, tearing down the infrastructure and the density that made downtown special. And they were putting up false fronts, trying to make themselves look modern and erase the historic character of the buildings. And they were also filling in main streets and creating pedestrian malls, trying to think that that was going to be the solution. None of these things worked, and in fact, they were sort of in the process of destroying downtowns while they were trying to save them. But they were trying to do anything that they could do. And at that time, the National Trust for Historic Preservation operated out of Washington and 5 regional offices. And one of the regional offices was in Chicago. And Mary Means was the director of that office. And Mary was receiving numerous phone calls and appeals from historical societies and people interested in historic preservation and in their historic downtowns, as they were seeing the demolitions and destruction happening. And she realized that she was ill-equipped, and the preservationists were actually ill-equipped to respond to what was happening, because really they didn't have any idea how economic development worked or how retail development worked at all. And so in response, she initiated a demonstration project in 1977, which was called the Main Street Project. This was our project poster at the time, after it got started. And she did that in order to gather on the ground experience, direct experience by historic preservationists to understand how downtowns worked, understand what was motivating the downtown property owners and merchants, and to really become integrated into the communities. And the idea was to sort of use historic preservation as a tool for helping revitalize, but not have that be the ultimate goal, at least publicly. Because most at the time, and probably still to a degree, most economic development programs kind of looked at historic preservation like it was a problem more than a solution. And her program really revolved around the idea of having a management component, which was the Main Street project manager, to try to in a way emulate the management structure that was in a regional mall, even though it would be a very different structure on the ground. So she She organized this demonstration project and identified 3 towns in the Midwest, very diverse towns. Galesburg, Illinois was the largest town, and that was in the top right corner. Madison, Indiana was on the right, on your right. The Galesburg is on the left. And then Hot Springs, South Dakota, which is the picture that doesn't have enough pixels in it to make it any bigger than that. But they're very different, and different cultures, different sizes, all had different problems, but they all sort of had the same problems at different scale. She hired 3 project managers. I was 25 years old when I was hired to go into this town and hopefully sort of turn it around. I mean, that was a little presumptuous, but it worked. I did feel like I was joining the Peace Corps, though. It was kind of like I wasn't going to Africa, but I was going to the Midwest and going to Galesburg. But and to preface that, I grew up in Philadelphia, and at the time I was in Vermont, so it was a big leap for me. All 3 project managers had a very strong background in historic preservation. None of us had any experience in economic development or retail management. So here we were sort of plunked into these towns to try to make a difference. By trial and error, we gained experience and really found that to get anywhere, we were going to need to get to know the people that we were working with. We needed to get to know the merchants and get to know the property owners. And that wasn't just getting to know them by having a meeting like this. That meant walking the streets, going in every day, kind of stopping in, visiting 2 or 3 merchants, talking to them about how business is, trying to understand their business and understand what their concerns were. And most of their concerns weren't, because they were all trying to hang on, most of the time they weren't looking to save or preserve their buildings, they were just trying to stay in business. And so our focus initially turned out to be more of a promotion and helping with marketing and promotion in the downtown. And we were helping with sidewalk sales and doing joint advertising in the newspaper, trying to create a unified image for downtown. And it was kind of the last thing that I would have thought I would have been doing out of graduate school for historic preservation. But it was really critical to building the trust and creating the accessibility between myself and the merchants in terms of building an organizational structure for downtown. By the end of the second year, we were actually having merchants come to us now that we knew them and had beers with them after work and sort of showed that we were empathetic with their concerns. They were coming to us saying, well, we know that you're sort of a preservation guy, and we're thinking about sort of redoing our sign, or we're thinking about putting an awning up, or we're thinking about doing something on our facade of our building. What do you think? And so then that gave us entree to start working with them on building changes. As we started seeing changes happening, and the changes were very incremental. I mean, these were just like, you go for dry periods of a couple of months where nothing would happen, and you would just go, oh my God, what am I doing here? And then all of a sudden, somebody would come in with a big building that wanted to have all new signage put around their building and redo the inside and everything, and you go, whoa. So as these incremental changes started happening and were more consistent, Mary Means all of a sudden sort of announced, and she'd obviously just been waiting for this, she said, it's time to have a Main Street conference. We need to have a conference and let people know what we're doing, and maybe we'll get a couple of hundred people to come, and we'll do it as sort of a Midwest Main Street conference. And we were, well, she was sort of more ambitious than a couple of hundred. She actually booked a theater in Columbus, Ohio to have this conference in, and the theater could hold 2,500. So it was a little bit daunting. And actually, it sort of terrified the 3 of us. I mean, we were like 27 years old, right? And we also hadn't felt like we'd accomplished very much. It had only been 2 years in. And none of us had spoken to an audience larger than the Rotary Club in our towns. We met together several times to try to figure out how to fill 6 hours of stage time at this conference. and we needed a format and a way of communicating what we had learned so far. Initially, we thought each of us would give sort of the dog and pony show about our town and what we'd accomplished in our towns. And we realized that, number one, that would be kind of boring and also a little bit of a letdown because some of us had been more successful in some areas and not in others. And we decided that maybe we should divide it into topics where we could combine 3 towns worth of successes and learning experiences and communicate that, so it would make it look like we'd accomplished more and also be more meaningful to people as a takeaway. So we sort of decided on this team approach and divided the subject matter. First of all, we had to come up with the subject matter as to how we were going to organize it. I mean, we knew we'd all been working on different sidewalk sales and that kind of thing, and doing a couple of buildings and helping organize merchants and downtown owners. But we hadn't ever really put it together in any logical way. So we were having these meetings, we would get together for staff meetings in Chicago occasionally, and we were having meetings trying to figure out the format. And we were thinking maybe it was going to be like 8 or 10 subject matters. And I kind of thought that was going to get really cumbersome and tiresome for people to listen to, actually. And so I actually, before I went to the meeting, I went to the Galesburg Library and found a book on shopping center management, okay? So I looked through the book, and the table of contents was organized around 4 different categories. And the categories were, one was centralized ownership and management. The other one was coordinating the tenant mix in your shopping center. The third had design guidelines so that there was sort of unified signage and everybody was sort of doing the same thing. And the fourth was marketing. And so I brought the book and sort of showed it around. Everybody thought, oh gosh, we can probably fit everything that we're doing into 4 categories like that. And so we basically took the shopping center manual and organized it around downtown revitalization topics for our conference. And it was sort of ironic, but that's sort of where the Main Street approach arrived out of a shopping center manual, which is pretty funny. So we couldn't use the titles, and actually what they were doing under the shopping center was a lot different than what we were doing in downtowns. But we took organized management that was in the shopping center manual, and we made that just organization. And that could cover having a merchants association, it could be the different committee structures, and it could also be the Main Street project manager at the center of the organizational structure. We took marketing and made that into promotion so that we could sort of have our own branded words, I guess. And but these were really not to create 4 points. They were to create four topics that we could then present at this conference for our first sort of debut. And we took design, and rather than having guidelines, we just made it design in general so that it could include public improvements, awnings, anything that could fall under that title. And then tenant mix, we sort of labored on that because we saw downtown much more, as was mentioned this morning, in the Jane Jacobs way, with wanting downtowns to really serve a 24-hour purpose and have the density to really provide a whole core of activities that it always had provided in the city. And so we called that economic restructuring because it was going to involve restructuring the mix and the uses in downtown. That's now been modified to be economic vitality. Deliberately, we always kept historic preservation sort of at the back door, and it always was brought in through the back door rather than being brought in front forward. And it was really just the tool to guide all of these 4 principles. The 4 categories allowed us to incorporate everything, present it like we knew what we were doing, even though we weren't quite sure. We'd only been doing it for 2 years. When the conference the day of the conference, we had 500 people at the conference, and mostly there are professional consultants and architects and planners from all over the central United States. We were actually the youngest people in the room, which was also a little intimidating. By the end of the day, they were really excited. They responded to our candid observations and our ability to kind of learn on the job, and they were also really impressed with the concept of the Main Street project manager, because many of them had been working advising small towns for the last couple of years and not being able to find a traction point. At the end of the conference, several people commented that our 4 categories sort of reminded them of the KISS principle, which we hadn't ever heard of the KISS principle, and which is just keep it simple, stupid, right? And that really was trying to keep Main Street simple rather than overcomplicate it, made it so that it could be much more accessible to people, and they could buy into it. Let me just show you. I got so wound up. So this is the 3 of us at one of our meetings trying to figure out the 4 categories that we were going to be talking about. And so that's me on the left, Scott, and Tom is in the lower picture, smiling. This is after we figured out our four categories. Ultimately, the conference really led to the success of that conference. We actually ended up with a standing ovation of all 500 people. And Mary, at the end of that day, she said, "All right, I'm going to be raising money. We're all leaving the Midwest, and we're going to go to Washington and start a national program. This is a success." And we went, "Whoa, okay, that's good," because we were all a little bit worried about when the 3 years ran out, where we were going to go or what we were going to do. So this sort of answered it. And after the KISS comment, we thought, well, maybe we need to come up with an acronym that could use the first letter of each of these 4 subject areas, which would become the 4 points. And the best we could do was come up with dope. And we didn't use that. So ultimately, the 4 conference topics were codified as the National Main Street Approach, and later established in the National Main Street Center and Main Street America. And even without the acronym, it's really amazing how well how resilient it has been, and how well it has been able to be modified with the changes in the economy, the changes in the challenges in downtown, and everything can still sort of be organized under those same 4 points. This final slide is the 3 of us. Right today, still today, we're 4 best friends, and so that's me, Scott, and Tom, and then 20 years later, it's me, Scott, and Tom, and Mary Means in the center, and it's proven to be successful for friendship as well as for saving many downtowns. So, thank you.
Okay. So, you're here today, Main Street Together 2025, Main Street, Rhode Island. It's been we say it's going to be crawl, walk, and then run, and we've been saying we're toddling right now, right? So we're getting going. And now, introducing our next step, the Rhode Island Main Street Learning Cohort for 2026. That's what we're going to talk about to end the day today. So this is where, over the past few years, we've been doing a lot of talking about what is Main Street, what is this all about? Now we're going to be moving on to the how, okay? We know enough now to start talking about how are we going to do this. So Our Main Street Learning cohort is going to invite up to 10, we think, approximately, communities from around Rhode Island by application to participate in a series of workshops with Main Street America, who will be coming to Rhode Island once a month from January through June in 2026. We're going to do a workshop, and each one will be a day long, one on each of the 4 points, and not just what it is, but how, how do you do these things? And then the 5th workshop on transformation strategies, with the 6th workshop being a shared technical assistance experience to present what has been learned and give feedback to each other. There will be homework involved, as Miriam mentioned earlier, through the Academy and other assessments, tools, resources. And then there'll be the monthly roundtables that we've been doing, the webinars will continue, and they will coordinate with what's happening in the cohort. The roundtables will still be open to absolutely anybody, as they have always been, and be free as they have always been. So, all right. I'm going to ask Miriam to come up and give us a little bit more detail about what is going to be included in this curriculum.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Oh, that's reaching out. Okay. Wonderful. So, as Jillian described, we're moving from the what to the how. This morning I shared that each of these 4 points, to become accredited, we roll down a menu of tactics, and you've chosen what works for you and your place with your people and your culture. And so we'll walk through the large menu of tactics behind using historic design principles, but also complete streets and sustainable development principles. Each of these is an iterative process. They're living documents. And so we keep adding more and more tactics that work for community development, thriving local economies. And so in the design workshop, we're talking about physical spaces and examples from across the country, and then activities where you can draw and act on your own community framework, applying what we're teaching in the morning, applying that in the afternoon. In each of these workshops, we bring in our national staff who travel around and are hired as consultants to go into towns and teach these in depth. And so in design, you have an architect who used to do green building and is versed in the specific details of, oh, you're interested in that tactic? Let me tell you 13 stories of how others have done it well. And so then we're getting into economic vitality, and so we'll have a small business development expert. One colleague that's coming to mind is Joy. She and her husband didn't want to see their downtown knocked down, and so she and her husband just bootstrapped financing stacks over the last 10 to 15 years to purchase and preserve her own town, and that's how she got into Main Streets. And so as a small developer and a small business owner, she comes to Main Streets to teach our curriculum, but with core stories from her town in the Midwest, but also towns across the country that she has consulted with under our nonprofit service of flying around and teaching in person. And then session 3 in promotion, that's more of the marketing side, the festival side, the local arts side. It's often sort of the gateway drug to Main Streets, and then people realize, right, we need to preserve the place I love. For me, it's often parks. How do I literally conserve our park resources in my town in Pittsburgh? And so each of these workshops, not to like give a rundown of the agenda, but each of these workshops is taking an expert from our team, getting into the tactical details with examples, but then applying it to your own town. So each of the communities that joins, we're asking for 3 minimum attendees for each of the 6 workshops, but those 3 people can cycle in and out. So you want to build a team. You want to think, who are my 6 besties, or the 10 people who show up to all the community events and are complaining, but also looking for what we can do about it, and get at least 3 people to cycle in and out so that as a team, you're learning the whole curriculum. And then the most exciting part, it is this slide, is session 5. We're going to walk through bringing all the 4 points together into transformation strategies that can be customer-focused or product-focused, generally you're ending up with a mixture of several. And by learning through many examples and doing, basically taking fake data and fake examples from across the country, and doing your own transformation strategy in the classroom with our teammates, with my colleagues, then taking that home, practicing it in your neighborhood with as many people as you can gather around the process that will teach you as homework. And then coming back together in the last session to present how you would design a transformation strategy for your community and get feedback from the whole room that's been learning the Main Street approach with you during all these sessions, and from several members of our team who will come in from our national organization for feedback on that day. And so you'll get to learn from our whole organization because we have a different expert for each of the 4 points, and so you won't see the same person for each workshop. I think I hand this back to you now, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. She'll come back if you have more questions. But so we're calling it a learning cohort because the goal is really to see how this works, right? And if you go through the cohort and then you decide it's not for us, we'll understand. We hope you don't think that. But as I said, January through June, ideally these are going to occur on Fridays and Saturdays. It's still TBD. We were thinking 3 Fridays, 3 Saturdays to address the mix of participants. We will probably have that figured out by the middle of November. Yeah. So the locations are also TBD. We really want to rotate to different locations around the state. If you want to host, please let me know. We would love that. And then the roundtables will continue to be on Thursdays from 12 to 1 p.m. on Zoom. They do also get recorded, but we would love to have you attend. And then the homework. We've been thinking about, how to make this whole thing as accessible and doable as possible while also being meaningful, right? Enough to be meaningful. So we're saying that the homework that an individual would do, which would be through the academy or the reading you might do, is going to be strongly encouraged. And then the homework that would be for the whole team to complete as a group, understanding it's going to be more challenging. The only one we'll say is required is going to be the transformation strategies work, since that final session is something to share what you've discussed and thought about. So really trying to thread that needle between not asking too much of you all, but making it enough so that we really do move everyone that participates forward. So what's a community team? So we sometimes just say communities are going to apply, but we're really thinking about asking you to put together a team, at least 3 individuals. 1 person, please, be the primary contact for the team. But it can be an unlimited number of people, really. If Main Street America said the more the merrier. So if you really have a lot of people that are really interested, ideally everyone is committing to come to all of them or as many as they can, but the more the merrier. So we do really want, though, there to be enough of the same people coming so that it builds upon each other. We're trying to be flexible, but really, if anyway, we'll leave it there. We can discuss it more. But and we're really thinking about these teams as being, they could be one organization, it could be multiple organizations, it could be a group of individual people, or it could be a combination of both. It really depends on what is going on in your individual community. And I know we talked about this morning, like if there are multiple groups that are kind of in different districts, but they're near each other, that to me sounds like a great team. Like, I think that makes total sense. I think it will be different everywhere, and that's fine. And ideally, the municipality is aware and supportive, if not actively participating. So these are some ideas. I had a possible like groups that might be interested in being part of a team. Again, it's going to really depend on every community. It's going to be different, but here are some of the ones we thought of that you might want to think about. If if you have a merchants association, a neighborhood association, a friends group, a historic preservation group or society, boards, commissions, and staff of the town or city, the chambers, the health equity zones, don't forget them, and other engaged stakeholders. I know Teresa mentioned the club and the Odd Fellows, like those people are certainly possibilities, and other dedicated community members. I wanted to also say that I've been talking about Main Street out in the world in Rhode Island for 5 years now, and I've heard all the arguments, right? And so I'm going to share these with all of you because as you'll probably get them when you talk to people, and I just want you to know how I've thought about the answers to all these questions, because I really think there are answers to all these questions. So, so you didn't have to write this down or anything. I'll share it, but there, so you know that might happen. And just to reiterate that it's really up to all of you. That, like I said, the composition of your team is up to you. How many actual individuals get logins to Main Street America? Because, which I don't think I mentioned, the one requirement that has a cost involved is that we do want your team to purchase one membership to Main Street America, and we are getting a discounted membership. So that would allow 4 logins into their system. And if you want more, if you have more individuals on your team and you want more logins, that's up to you, right? Yes, an extra login. So an individual is $95, or I think they could buy a second. Yeah, it could be a second group membership also. It's very reasonable compared to other professional associations. I mean, I can't say that enough.
Yeah, make it $150. That's all, ma'am.
Yeah, she said, as she said, she will. If you were accepted into the cohort, she will give you the code to be able to sign up at the $150 rate, which is a startup organization rate. It's only going to be available for 2 years, but we can make use of that. And then the homework, like I said, if really there's not time to do it now, you could save it for later. That's also up to you. And to take the pieces of it that do work for you. And I just put this note up here about the idea of the local Main Street organization and recognizing, like as Teresa explained, like that might be a someday thing for a lot of us, and that's okay too, right? And to keep an open mind about, sometimes it may feel overwhelming. I have had a lot of people tell me we can never do that. Why can't we do that? 41 other states do it, right? So there is an application. It is not complicated. It is not long. We really just need to know, who are you? What's going on in your place? What is that? What is the place like? And why do you want to be a part of this? There are a couple areas where you can upload things, just to give us more context about what's going on in your Main Street, to help us help you. Same thing with those word counts, which are really just a guide. Please don't worry, this is not something to worry about. But the deadline is December 1st, because we do want all of you to know well before Christmas, since we're looking at mid-January for the first session. And if you want help, first, there will be lots of information on the website. You can call or email us. You're absolutely invited to do that. We're going to do another, our November roundtable will be a Zoom session that will go over this information again, so you can send your potential team members to watch it. The sign up is live on our roundtable page on our website. That's Thursday, November 13th at noon. We'll also be sharing a template email to make it easier for you to describe what is Main Street all about, so you can copy and paste that description, so just to make it easier. And if you're going to have a meeting to talk about this and you want us to come, please invite us. We will make every effort to attend. And here is our contact information. You are very, very much encouraged to reach out. So I'm going to invite Miriam back up here and we'll answer any questions. Any questions? Yes.
What corner would not, it would not exist if it wasn't for having a coordinated program in the state of Maine. I just got to be frank, would not have done it. I would have looked at this and said, too much work, right? But then, like, knowing there was a coordinating program in Maine, getting introduced to the model, helped us put it all together, and the resources are amazing. A lot of our people originally didn't want to get online. They were like, "Whoa, it's too much." But then you can download the PDFs of the different topic areas, and I have them printed and hand them out and let people read them. And it just was a soft and nice way to introduce the idea. But literally, we would not have done it because it would have gotten scattershot and without a coordinated program. So, thanks.
Hey, Dwayne.
I think it's kind of a combination. A question, the comment is, but those maybe are individuals maybe doing work in these areas, perhaps some recommendations that y'all could recommend pairing them with other folks to form their teams.
Yeah.
Just because they may be having challenges, but they have an idea that they can be paired with other folks. Because many people work in silos and don't know who they can be paired with until it resonates. So that's just an encouraging thing that for those who are individually thinking about this work, not be deterred from applying because they can't get a group together.
Okay, yeah, we'll think about that. Yeah, Miriam, go.
A recommendation, because I've been in that situation, and my background is sustainable development, community organizing, all that, where like there's silos, but it resonates. My recommendation would be to come to Jillian with who else might this resonate with for collaborative partner conversations, because no one knows everyone, so you got to weave it together. Thanks.
Robert.
So 2 comments. One might be a question, one might be just a declaration.
Okay.
Somehow there was a statement about you moved from what to the how.
Yes.
And I'm going to argue it never stops. Move, take action, go back to the what. Move back and forth. It never stops. Second point, or second observation, when you think about all the experts who present, who then figures out how to facilitate the connections between the parts?
So the facilitating the connections between the parts is what led me to leave my beloved job in Central Falls and come here to try to start a Main Street program, because I felt like a coordinating program is the connecting, like, right? That's the network that connects us statewide and also enables the connections locally.
So that's 90%. Say that more directly.
Okay, I will. Okay, Susie?
Thank you both for bringing the national Main Street to specifically Rhode Island. In 2026, we'll have the state action plan, climate action plan emerging into the public, informing us all the things we need to do to meet the state mandated mandates by 2030. So the predominant conversation in Rhode Island is going to be for cities and anybody who owns a building over 20,000 square feet. What are you going to do to participate? So we have, like, the larger climate in 2026 is going to have so much to do with climate. So it seems to me we're retooling to emphasize that. This is specific to Rhode Island. Other states may be different. But have Scott been given to how to use this terrific program to advance whatever team might come forward to anticipate that particular climate as well? That's what we're going to be talking about in 2026, about things has Scott been given to that at the state level.
So as far as the state goes, Commerce Rhode Island and statewide planning together were able to get a grant from the EDA to work with 10 or 12 of our most climate vulnerable Main Street districts. They're more focused on physical, like stormwater infrastructure, but those 10 or 12 communities are already engaged in the early stages of that work. We are connected with them. And in doing so, we have been emphasizing how Main Street organizations are climate preparedness. I think you touched on this earlier. We, in June, had Katie Trouts from Montpelier, Vermont, speak to us. It's recorded, it's on our website. You may remember in 2023, Montpelier, Vermont had devastating floods, and it was their Main Street program, Montpelier Alive, that coordinated the response and recovery efforts. And now 90% or more of their businesses are back open. They have rebuilt with climate resilience in mind, but without having been organized, a lot of them recognize they would not have been able to do that. So we're trying to make the argument to the state, to the infrastructure bank, who they are on board, and others, that this people part is just as important as the physical part. So yeah, there's definitely been thought given to it, and we can talk more. We can talk about it more. Yeah. Any other questions about details about the cohorts, the teams that? Oh, Annette.
I guess one question: when a person signs up, you know, with their team, or if they ask you for people to be the team, do you have to have at least one Main Street in mind?
Yes, we ask there to be a, yes. Ideally, but like our real ideal thought, and we're being flexible, but the ideal thought is that there's one district and that there's at least 3 people who are somehow connected to that district that apply as a team. And if I know people, I will connect you all as individuals, and that's why I'm saying I'll come to a meeting, but I don't know everyone, so so I may need your help.
Follow-up question.
Yeah.
Because, you know, the gentleman here forward, you know, Beth, you know, observed our city as a city of main streets.
Yep.
If you have those 3 people come, and somebody here is Knightsville, and somebody here is Patuxent Village, and somebody here is Rolfe Square, can they come in with 3 ideas, but then leave the program deciding this is the one that our city needs to go for?
I mean, that might happen. I mean, this is a learning. This is about learning, right? And we would love for, you know, as we move into our next year, for some of these teams to coalesce as more organized Main Street efforts. Maybe that starts with just one person from a place. But to me, I see it as like it's not completely linear, right? So this is our next big step. It's our first year as an official program. We have pending funding plans with Main Street America, how it's going to roll out in years 2 and 3. So, but this is, yeah, since I know where we are right now is where we are right now. And we have a lot of people who love their places and are doing work on behalf of their places, but we haven't been connected in recent years. We have, you know, some of our districts are, you know, they only have one person, right? So recognizing where we are, we're going to bring it to the next step next year. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to add one comment that many districts are not rectangular corridors. So in my town, Palm Harbor, Florida, where I live now, the corridor is like a hilarious shape around 2 blocks of businesses, but then the school and the park and the waterfront, and then the core community members who have like a certain 5-minute walk to that. Like, it's a wonky shape. It does not have to be, this is my district and that's all I'm talking about. So to your question, and I'm grateful for the openness, that part of the discovery and learning process is we don't even know the shapes of our districts yet. So bring a coalition. Yeah.
All right. How are we doing on time, everyone? It's 3:15 exactly, which was our target end time. So are there any other questions? Well, if not, then I will end here.